I think it's well understood in the alliance that the United States troop presence in Europe is going to be adjusted. That work was already ongoing, and it's been done in coordination with our allies. I'm not saying they're going to be thrilled about it, but they certainly are aware of it.
After the attack on Europe's biggest nuclear plant, is Donald Trump now fearing what Vladimir Putin may do next? America appears to be pulling back from Europe, scaling down troops and weapons across Allied territory. A shocking new report reveals how Trump's decisions could leave America's NATO allies facing growing uncertainty. Trump's push for Europe to defend itself may now backfire, and Putin is watching every move very closely. In a major shock to NATO, American troops are now reportedly set to begin withdrawing from bases across Europe. The United States is reportedly considering pulling out nearly 5,000 troops from Germany alone. Germany currently hosts the highest number of active-duty U.S. troops in Europe, with around 35,000 personnel stationed there. The reported move comes amid rising tensions between Washington and Europe over Donald Trump's war with Iran. Trump administration proposals for the troop drawdown are expected to be formally presented to NATO in June, Reuters reported. The Pentagon has reportedly set a 6 to 12-month timeline for withdrawing forces from Germany. Not just troops, Washington is also expected to scale back strategic bombers, fighter jets, and drone deployments in Europe. American submarines and warships assigned to NATO missions could also face reductions, according to Politico. The decision was reportedly discussed during a closed-door NATO policy directors meeting involving a Pentagon advisor. However, Europe and the United States may still attempt to iron out differences during a NATO conference in June.
I think it's well understood in the alliance that the United States troop presence in Europe is going to be adjusted. That work was already ongoing, and it's been done in coordination with our allies. I'm not saying they're going to be thrilled about it, but they certainly are aware of it. We have obligations in the Indo-Pacific, we have obligations in the Middle East, we have obligations in the Western Hemisphere. So this has been an ongoing process. Shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. But I think there's a broad recognition that there are going to be eventually less U.S. troops in Europe than there has historically been, for a variety of reasons. In fact, there was a surge after for example, the movement of troops from Germany that was announced a week ago. The Germans didn't freak out about it because they knew it just took us back to the 2022 numbers. And it was, I think, a reduction of less than 11 or 12% of our total presence there. We have to start thinking about what do we do if a few weeks from now Iran decides we don't care, we're going to keep the straits closed, we're going to sink any ship that doesn't listen to us or doesn't pay us. Then someone's going to have to do something about it. Okay, they're not just going to voluntarily reopen the straits in that scenario. So we have to start thinking about it. I raised that point today. I got a lot of nods. I got a lot of people that came up to me afterwards and acknowledged it. But we don't have an announcement for you today in terms of something that's happening. I know there's a plan in place for what to do if the shooting stops. It's what the French-UK initiative talks about when the conditions are set. Well, what they mean by where the conditions are set is when no one is shooting. But we have to have a plan B for if someone is shooting. How do you reopen the straits? That war can only end with a negotiated settlement. It will not end with a military victory by one side or the other, at least from a traditional standpoint of how military victories are defined. So it will have to lead, and if we can play a role in making that happen, the president is very much interested in doing it. We just, over the last few months, just sort of sensed that there wasn't a lot of progress being made, but maybe dynamics will change, and if they do, we stand ready to play whatever constructive role we can play.
At the Shangri-La Summit, U.S. War Secretary Pete Hegseth also issued a warning to Europe and NATO allies.
When our interests diverge, we adjust pragmatically, without the drama or the moralizing. I think Western Europe might take note. This is a mindset we fully embrace. The era of the United States subsidizing the defense of wealthy nations is over. We need partners, not protectorates. We seek alliances built on shared responsibility, not dependency. This is the maturation of our alliances in a new era. It's a vision that puts our alliances on a sustainable footing, ensuring they are fit for the challenges of this century, not the last. This shift is not a matter of choice, it is a matter of strategic prudence. The National Defense Strategy makes clear that the old toothless, utopian, and globalist course of foreign policy was headed for a disaster. We are ready to work with all of you, where you are, based on your own situation, your own geography, and your own cultural, political, and economic realities to ensure that a Pacific free of any dominant hegemon is secured. And that's why a core line of effort in our national defense strategy is to increase burden sharing with U.S. allies and partners and simultaneously empower them to contribute to our collective defense. This is no longer an afterthought. It's an essential ingredient of our strategy. President Trump has been crystal clear about this from day one in his first administration and now in his second. Alliances only work when they are true partnerships. It is a two-way street. You don't have a strong alliance unless everyone has skin in the game. No freeloading. History is not over. Alliances are not judged by the number of flags, but by the number of formations. We don't need more conferences. We need more combat power. I'm sorry to say this here. Less Shangri-La, more ships, more subs. For too long, polite pleas from our European allies to spend more on their own defense fell on deaf ears. They're finally playing catch up, and we let ourselves get distracted by empty globalist rhetoric about the rules-based international order, while European capitals threw open their borders and hollowed out their militaries. You can have all the rules you want, and rules are great, but if you can't back them up with hard power, the rules are not worth the paper they are written on. Europe and NATO have some big decisions to make, and more on that soon.
Trump's NATO decision comes in the aftermath of an attack on Europe's biggest nuclear power plant, adding fresh urgency to the crisis. Russia accused Ukraine of targeting Europe's largest nuclear plant in a drone strike reported on May 30th, according to Russian officials. Russia's state nuclear company Rosatom said a drone struck the turbine hall of Unit 6 at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Rosatom chief described the incident as a deliberate attack on the nuclear facility, according to a Reuters report. Alexei Lukashev said Russia had repeatedly warned about threats to the safety and security of the Zaporizhzhia facility. Russia said the drone detonated after impact, tearing a hole in the wall of the turbine hall building. As per Moscow, the explosion caused no damage to primary nuclear systems or power generation equipment at the site. The Global Atomic Watchdog's chief expressed concern following reports of the alleged attack on the facility. Rafael Grossi warned that attacking nuclear sites is like playing with fire, according to the IAEA. Ukraine's military rejected the allegation, calling it yet another propaganda ploy by Moscow. Kiev said Ukrainian forces did not strike Power Unit No. 6 or any other part of the nuclear plant. Ukraine military said, and I quote, "Ukrainian servicemen act strictly within the international humanitarian law and are fully aware of the consequences of any actions targeting nuclear facilities. At the relevant section of the front line, there was no active fighting during the incident, and no weapons were used." Unquote. Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant has remained under Russian control since its capture by Russian forces in March 2022. The facility lies close to the front line in Ukraine's southeastern Zaporizhzhia region, where fighting continues. The plant has repeatedly been caught in the war's crossfire, sparking international nuclear safety concerns. Both sides have frequently accused each other of endangering the site during the more than 4-year war.